Hey everyone, Ready Rex here, and today I'm going to be talking about Aurora's album, What Happened to the Heart. And don't mind my moist critical cosplay today. I just kind of woke up, so that's why I'm wearing this t-shirt right now. Yeah, I previously had listened to all of the tracks actually, on two separate live streams. It was supposed to just be one live stream, but it ended up being two because it got taken down a couple times during the first live stream due to copyright. So I saved the last couple songs for the next live stream so I won't have to worry about like a strike or anything. That's why that happened. But yeah, if you want to see any of those reactions, let me know and I can post them. But anyways, let's get straight into my thoughts on this album. I'll go song by song before I get into my final thoughts. Alright, so first we have Echo of My Shadow. This was the first track on the album. I thought it was a really good start. It had that classic ethereal sound that Aurora had. It was very pretty. Honestly, I don't have a whole lot more to say about it. It was just a very nice, pretty song. It was a perfect opener. It just was super calming. After that, we had To Be Alright. I thought that was just another catchy song. This is another one I'd heard, by the way, which, by the way, I had heard previously tracks 2, 3, 4, 5, and 9. Although track 9, which is, let me double check the name, A Soul with No King, I'd heard the remix, because the remix came out a little before the album did. Those are all the tracks that I'd heard already on stream, so these are just kind of my thoughts now that I've heard them like as part of the album. But yeah, To Be Alright, I thought it was just it's a nice catchy song. I think the transition is really nice from the previous song, and I think it also helps bring the album from like a super slow start respectively into something a little bit more upbeat, a little bit more energetic. It's not going too far yet though. It's just a slow step up, which is really nice for the flow of the album. And then we have Your Blood, another good song. I really enjoyed this one. I listened to it the first time. Same with To Be Alright, actually. Actually, wait, did I like that one the first time? I don't know if I did like To Be Alright the first time. No, I didn't. Okay. So I did not like To Be Alright the first time I listened to it, but then I liked it a lot more the second time. I don't know what was up with that. I don't know. It's just one of those songs, I guess. But anyways, back to Your Blood. Yeah, definitely another one I enjoyed. I enjoyed it the first time. I enjoy it now. It's just a catchy song. I mean, it's probably up there for the top half of the songs on this album. And I think that kind of goes for all of the singles that came out previously. One other thing it does is that it helps push the envelope of like energetic sound a little bit farther. Where it's just, again, it's kind of just another slight step up. Otherwise, though, it keeps that medium between a slow-paced and a fast-paced track. It's just kind of there in the middle. Similar to the previous one, except for that was a little bit more on the slow side, and now this one's a little bit more on the fast side. Okay, a few more things to say about this song. The vocal effects and the stylized vocals in general are really nice on this one. It's one of the few on this album that I think are really unique and special about that. Not to say the other ones have bad vocals, but it's the uniqueness of the effects that are used mixed with how she's singing is like perfect on a few of these songs. That and the backing vocals are also really good. I super enjoyed the backing vocals, and that goes for a lot of Aurora's music. If there's backing vocals, I usually like them. And then the percussion at the end of this song, it's like for maybe like the last minute or so, it was perfect. It was really good. It was more percussion than what I'm used to from an Aurora song. At least it feels like it. I don't know. Maybe I'm not thinking straight, but it feels like it's a lot more percussion heavy on that latter half of that song versus what a lot of Aurora songs are. Okay, and then we have The Conflict of the Mind. So this one, I was a little conflicted about, actually, when I heard it the first time, which I have a video of my first reaction. I remember liking it, but I think I was still a little iffy on some of the elements. Now I do definitely like it a lot more than what I did then. The one thing that I still kind of stand similarly about is I don't know if I mentioned this in the video, but I feel like the bridge is a bit boring on this one. It's just kind of underwhelming. I feel like it could have gone somewhere else and it didn't. But honestly, that's not like a huge problem. I really like the rest of the song. And it's, by the way, it's another one of those songs that I think does really well with the vocal effects and stylized vocals, because she kind of has like that monotone sound throughout this one that I really enjoy. Mixed with the vocal effects, it's like perfect. It's really good. And again, it's pretty unique too compared to a lot of other stuff that she does. Oh, and I do want to mention the chorus on this song is definitely one of the best choruses on this album. That, and I enjoy how she uses her voice as an instrument on this one in particular. I realize it's kind of a big thing with Aurora that she tends to use her voice kind of as an instrument throughout a lot of her music, but on this one it's like she took a sample of her voice and like put it into a synth board or something to change the pitch, and I really enjoy that. I think that was super cool. Oh my god, I almost forgot. Oh, I had to look at my notes. The creepy ass giggle at the end of that song. That I do hate. I hate that. I think I mentioned it when I did my first video on that. I hate that giggle so much. It's creepy. I don't like the sound of it. I don't know. It's like a sensory thing for me. I really don't like it. Okay, so anyways, up next we got Some Type of Skin. Another one that I previously listened to. I didn't actually have a lot to say about this one. I think it is one of the best choruses on the album. I think it's better than the Conflict of the Minds chorus, which again, I did just mention that's one of the better ones, so if that says anything. It's very, very catchy on this song, though. Like, super, super catchy. And then I liked the siren. There's like a siren sound that kind of goes back and forth a little bit on the track. It's not like during the entire song, but it's off and on. I think it's somewhere around the chorus when it plays. But yeah, great track. Anyways, the essence. So this one, this one I actually have quite a few notes for. So this one I wasn't super fond of. I think it is super abrupt and really, I think it kills the momentum of the first, tracks 1 through 5. Because I feel like they were keeping a really nice flow. There's consistency within the tracks, and then it just goes down like instantly. I'm not big on acoustic songs. Some of you probably already know that, so that's definitely another downside of the song for me. I just think it's a bit boring because of it. But overall, I think if this song was just moved to maybe the second song on the album, it would have been a lot better and a lot more reasonable, because it just feels like, again, we've killed all the energy that was made with the previous songs. They were so consistent, and this is just so different from the other ones, and it just feels like it's a bit too abrupt for the flow of the album. I will say, though, if I was like depressed or something, it might hit a little different. In general, I'm a pretty happy person right now, so maybe that's why I'm not liking it as much. But yeah, anyways, it's not like one of my favorite songs for sure. It's not like terrible. I don't know. It's just kind of blah for me. Okay, up next we've got Earthly Delights. Luckily, I think this song helps kind of bring back a little bit more energy, similar to how the first and second track are on the album, where the second track slightly steps the energy back up. I think this song does the same thing without like drastically changing from the acoustic song into something that's like super hyper energetic or anything. So it does a good job at that, and I think that kind of helps save the previous track's fault of like killing the momentum. I will say though, it's not one of my favorites on the album. I think it's definitely better than the previous song. I'm not super fond of it though. I don't think I ended up adding this one to my playlist. Like, it's fine. It's not it hasn't grown on me very much over the past couple times I've listened to the album. One thing though that did stick out is that it has a very 80s sound throughout the instrumental, and that's actually one thing I want to mention now, that the 80s sound in this album is a recurring theme for sure. It'll come back several times. I probably won't mention it every time, but if you keep it in mind, you'll notice that there's like 80s sounds that kind of come back here and there throughout the tracks on the album. And then we have The Dark Dresses Lightly. So this one I really, really like. I was a bit conflicted on this one, not because I was like conflicted on if it's like okay or bad or good or anything. I actually just didn't know if it was my favorite or not. And I think I've come to the conclusion that's my favorite song on the album. I really, really like that song, and I was surprised because I ended up liking all of the singles that came out of this album. So I was like, I doubt that there's going to be an album track that I end up liking more, but I think this one did it. It has a really, really, really good chorus. It's by far my favorite chorus on the track, or on the album, I mean. It might be my favorite Aurora chorus ever. It is very, very catchy. I like the high notes that she hits in that one, although there is one thing. Well, I actually forgot about this until just now. The last minute of the song. I mean, you've came here, you've probably heard this album. You know what the last minute of that song is, and if you don't, go back to it. It is bad. Not like bad sounding, but I just think it's uncomfortable. It's a bit like over sexual for what it is. I think it's a bit silly to have that in an album like this. I mean, what I wrote down word for word is, I don't like the lyrics in the outro. I find them unnecessarily sexual, especially in the context of the album. The same with all of the ad-libs used. And again, I think you know what the ad-libs are that I'm talking about. It just feels weird. Based on everything else we've heard so far on this album, it feels very out of left field and unnecessary. You might have a different opinion on that. I'm not big on like super sexual themes and when I'm listening to music most of the time. It kind of depends on song to song though. I think some songs are able to pull it off a little bit better. This one just felt weird and unnecessary. But other than that though, it's still my favorite song on the album, so it is a really, really, really good song. I like super love that song. And maybe that'll change in the future. Maybe it'll go back and forth between a couple songs because there's a lot of good tracks on this, but for now I think it's my favorite. Oh, and one more thing I wanted to mention is there's like primitive sounds in the instrumental. You might know what I'm talking about. I wish I could be a little bit more specific. But the primitive sounds though I think are really cool. It's a nice touch into the instrumental. Okay, and then we have A Soul with No King. So firstly, this version is way better than the remix. I really enjoyed the remix, so I wasn't expecting to like this one more, but I did. I think while the remix is like cooler, as like, oh, I'm listening to it, it has all these nature sounds, and that's awesome. I love when nature's included in music, and I think the remix does a really good job at that. It kind of feels like I'm in a nature documentary or something. So I super enjoyed that. But then this one, the instrumental just goes so crazy on like the full version of the song. It's insane. Like, it's a weird mix of like so many different instruments. Like it kind of gives off like medieval sounds or something, which I think is actually especially interesting because the previous song, notice how I mentioned it had like primitive sounds. This one, it's like a cool progression to go from like those primitive sounds in the background of the previous song into more of a medieval instrumental in this song. I don't know if that was done on purpose, but I think it worked really well. And it just happened to be super cool. I don't know. In my head, I'm like goo goo gagaing at that, if that makes any sense. I will say though, like regarding the instrumental, the electric guitar I thought was a really weird choice, and I was iffy on it. I think it took me a couple listens to really appreciate it. I did enjoy it, I remember, during my first initial reaction, but I think I was still a little iffy on it, and now it's like it's settled in. I'm so happy about it. It reminds me a lot of Halo 2, the soundtrack on that, because they just kind of took the Halo 1 soundtrack and added an electric guitar in some of it, and that goes crazy, and it goes crazy here too. It worked out incredibly well. It also was sort of reminiscent of an old James Bond theme. I was trying to think of what it was on stream when I was reacting to it, and I think it might be a song in 007 on the N64, but I don't remember. If you know what I'm talking about, please let me know the track. One more thing about the song is that the instrumental towards the end, like an actual instrumental, there was like no lyrics or anything. I thought that was really good with the fiddle. It was so cool. That was getting me so hyped. But yeah, this was another really good song, especially instrumental wise. It's one of my favorite instrumentals from Aurora, even though I'm not sure if it's one of my favorite songs from Aurora, but that instrumental just goes so crazy and it's so unique. I have a lot of respect for that instrumental. Okay, and now we're on to Dreams. So this is another one that I wasn't really sure how I felt about it. This one actually did take me a few listens to really appreciate. Not that I didn't like it the first time, but I don't think I really appreciated it enough for what it was. I think firstly it's slow, so it almost kills the momentum of the previous two tracks, because those are some of the more energetic ones on this album. But I think there's just enough energy on it that it kind of keeps some form of momentum going on in this album. But that being said, though, I did really enjoy that song. I loved the choirs. I loved the vocalizations. It was all just super cool. And it really just felt like an old church that you'd find in like some medieval time period, which continues going on with that theme. This could just be a me thing, but in my head, I'm like, yeah, I'm still in the medieval times. Yeah, I'm at a church in the medieval times. Yeah, that's where I am. So that's where I'm at on that song. I really liked the like choirs and all that, and then it has kind of a dreamy sound to it, which is really fitting for the name Dreams. It does just feel very dreamy sound wise, which I think is super cool. It's a very beautiful song. Okay, and then we have My Name. So this one, I remember thinking right at the beginning that the instrumental was a bit silly sounding relative to what we had heard previously on the album so far, and also it was abrupt compared to the previous song. Is another song that I think just kind of killed it. It just killed the flow that was going on a little bit, just because it's so drastically different. And that being said, I think this is about the time when I realized, okay, this album is a bit on the sporadic side. It is a very sporadic album. Funny enough, that's similar to the 21 Pilots album, because that one was also very sporadic in its sounds. It didn't have a continuous flow to it. This one also isn't as egregious about it as the 21 Pilots one was. That one was very all over the place. This one, at least, like, I'm getting chunks of like similar songs, so for the most part it's better about that. I wrote down, I don't dislike this song, I don't love it either, and then in all caps, update, it has grown on me. I like it a bit more now. I was listening to it yesterday actually in the car, and I was like, yeah, you know what, I understand why you'd like this song. I think I ended up adding it to my playlist after that because it's one of those songs that it really did just take a few listens to grow on me. I'm not like huge on it. It's pretty good though. I don't think it's a favorite or anything, but yeah, it's pretty good. I think it would have been a better fit though with A Soul with No King if it was like right after that or right before it maybe. I don't know. You can let me know what you think about that. Okay. Now we have Do You Feel? This track felt like a B-side, to keep it real. I don't think it's bad. It's not a bad track. It just, no matter how I thought about it, I couldn't think of a way this should have ever been on this album. It doesn't fit in with any other song on this album almost at all. And again, it's not like bad or anything. Like it's a pretty good disco song, but I'm not getting why it's on this album. I don't get it. And keep in mind, I realize, or at least I heard that it was literally just put on to be a fun disco song. And it's not like I'm against the idea of like, oh, let's have fun, let's throw this on there. I just don't like that it's so drastically different from a lot of the other songs on here. Like, you can maybe say Starvation is similar enough, but honestly, I don't really get it. That, and then I think the theming of this song, or lack thereof, I mean, it's just a disco song. I feel like there's no major themes on this one. Is drastically different from the rest of the album, where the rest of the album feels a little bit heavier emotional wise. Well, this one is just out of nowhere. So I'm not too fond of that. I wish it was more similar. I think it would have been better off as a single or maybe a deluxe version of the album, because right now I don't like that it's so out of place here. It's very, very out of place. Okay, Starvation. So this one I know is a very popular one. You know what, there's some things here I liked, some things I didn't really like here. It was a weird song. So firstly, the military / like marching drums, those I actually did like. I thought they were a strange choice, but they kind of reminded me of like Black Parade or something, and I thought they were fun. I will say though, on the other side of that, the EDM at the last like minute of the song, I really didn't like that. It was another one of those things where I'm like, this is incredibly out of place here. It just felt like it didn't need to be there. It felt a little silly. And again, I'm all for experimentation and all that, but I just don't think it works here very well at all. And it's so drastically different from the other part of the song. And I mean, you could argue like, oh, it's the juxtaposition is supposed to like mean something, or it's supposed to make it sound better. I don't know. I don't like it, but I mean, I can understand the appeal at least. So I'm not like completely against it or anything. It's one of those things where it just really doesn't appeal to me very much. Also, I've heard that the music video makes the song better. I'm not going to take that into account. I haven't watched the music video, but to me, like right now I'm just listening to the songs, and to include the music video as part of a song feels, I don't know, it doesn't really make sense to me. And I get like sometimes music videos and things like that can make songs feel better, or like if you see a song in a movie or TV show, sometimes you'll have high regards for a song. So that could be the case, but as of now, I'm just listening to the songs as is. So I'm not gonna watch the music video to see if it makes me like the song more at the moment. Maybe it will, and if it does, I'll say something. But yeah, as of now, I'm not big on this track. It's one of my least favorites on this album. I think it is better than Do You Feel, and there's like some redeeming factors about it that I do enjoy, like the military drums. I don't know, overall though, it's not for me. Ooh, onto the Blade. So this was an interesting one. I felt so strange about this one because I really enjoyed it, but I couldn't quite figure out why. I'm thinking a lot of it has to go towards that bass line, because the bass line on this one was very powerful and very catchy. I like super enjoyed the bass line on this one. It was out of this world. And going off of that, I think that like it's such a weird song because I didn't find anything of it particularly catchy, but there's like an energy around it that really just draws me in and makes me want to listen to it more. I want to give credit and just credit that to the bass line, because that bass line really does draw me in. That and maybe the verses, because I think the verses do have a nice flow to them. Also, the dark sound of her voice on this one, it just sounds like something going on in the background, like she has some rage or something. But it's a strange song that I can't quite put my finger on it why I like it 100%. Let me know your thoughts on that one, because I'm actually curious if anybody else feels similar to me on that one, because it's so strange to me that I can't quite put my finger on why I like it so much. But it's probably one of my favorites on the album. I really enjoy it. All right. right, My Body Is Not Mine. This one was another really good song. I super enjoyed this one. Almost instantly, I actually picked up on a similarity to another song I really enjoy by Churches called Lies. There's something in the instrumental, both of them, that's super similar. It's so similar that I almost question if it's like some form of interpolation or maybe just some heavy inspiration, which I could definitely see this Aurora song being inspired by Churches. There's a lot of similarities between the two that I could probably go through and pick them out for a while, but I'll leave it at that for now. I also thought there's some small similarities to Capital Cities. You've heard them before. They make the song Safe and Sound. Very, very popular song. I know that we'll be safe and sound. Mostly because of the trumpets. I think they were trumpets, is a little hard to tell. They felt synthesized, but Capital Cities is really big on trumpets, and that was what instantly came to mind. And how they're being played on this one is kind of similar to their album. Let me check what it's called. Oh, it's Solarize. I thought there was quite a few similarities to how some of the songs are produced on Solarize, which if you haven't checked out that album, I definitely recommend it. I'm not like big on every song on that, but there's a few really, really good ones on there. I will say though, the ending of My Body Is Not Mine is not one of my particular favorites. If I was listening to the album, I think I'd let it play out. But if it was like by itself in a mix of other songs that are all over my playlist, then I think I'd skip the last part of the song, just because I'm not huge on it. I think it's fine. It fits in well enough, but again, it's just not as much for me as the rest of the song is. Okay, on to the final song of the track, Invisible Wounds. So I thought this was a really, really good ending song. It matched the energy of the first song on the album too, like really well. Like they felt like they were super similar. I will say though, I think the previous song does it no favors in regards to transitions. There's no transition into this song. This song is very different from the previous one, which again is kind of a theme for this album. It's very sporadic like that. So that kind of sucked, but luckily the song it kind of creates its own transition in the fact that it just has such a kind of slow start and then it ramps up a little bit. And of course, we're back to the ethereal sound that was very noticeable in the first track on the album. Honestly, you could say that ethereal sound is present in both her voice and the instrumental of the track. It just felt like the whole thing was very ethereal. The song just kind of leaves a good taste in your mouth. Like you get to the end of the album and you're like, oh, this is a very nice, pretty ending. And then on top of that, it kind of loops back into the first track if you're listening to the album on loop really, really well, to the point where you might not notice that you've restarted the album if you're just kind of driving or something. You might not realize it at first. That's a really, really good way to end an album, by having it transition into the first song like that. But yeah, I was really, really happy with Invisible Wounds as the final track. I might as well even go as far as saying like angelic sound that it had was like super nice. Oh my god. So this, I didn't actually write a note about this. I just now realized the instrumental in production on Invisible Wounds. Oh my god, it's so similar to Twin Shadow. Yeah, it's so similar to Twin Shadow's album Caer. It's Caer. I don't know how I'm supposed to pronounce that, but there's really similar production elements there on some of the tracks from that album. Wow. I'm surprised I didn't notice that before, because now it's sticking out like a sore thumb to me. That's probably why I liked that song so much, is that it just reminded me of that album. Because Caer is one of my favorite albums in general. It's a really good album. Wow. Okay. I wasn't expecting that, but I'm happy I noticed that before I ended this video, because I would have been upset if I finished this video and found out that they sounded so similar. Okay, on to the conclusion of this album. Overall, I'd say this was a pretty good album. If I had to pick like a top 3 songs, I think I'd put The Dark Dresses Lightly, Some Type of Skin, and maybe Dreams. I wrote down Dreams, but honestly, like I feel like I could swap that out with almost any of the singles that came out for this album, and maybe there's a couple other songs I might be able to swap it out for on the album, but it's a tough top 3 because there are a lot of good songs on this album. It was a nice surprise to have a couple non-singles in my top 3 here. All right, to further talk about this album, I think there's a lot of really, really good production. Aurora took a lot of experimental risks, which I think some of them panned out really well, like The Dark Dresses Lightly. I feel like that one was a bit experimental and it worked out really well. But then on the other hand, I do think that some of them didn't work out as well for me. It's just a lot of it comes down to just the really, really experimental songs, I feel like tended to be the ones that were most abrupt on the album. I feel like if you're going to go experimental, you kind of have to go all out and kind of at least vaguely stick to the sound. Sort of like Death Grips, which we actually mentioned Death Grips while talking about Aurora. Somehow Death Grips comes up while talking about Aurora. And it really just comes down to that experimental sound that she's going for on some of these songs. Because Death Grips, on one hand, they're all experimental. You know what you're getting with their albums. It's like an album is going to sound super similar, but it's all going to be like some crazy sound. With Aurora, it's like I'm getting some classic Aurora sounds here mixed with some new ones, and then just these crazy out of left field sounds here and there that are just taking me aback. I'm not like, I don't want to hate on it because I really do respect the choice of having these experimental songs in here, but I'd still wish that there was a consistency there. There's just so many times that I feel like the flow of the album is really disrupted. Actually, I wrote down notes of what songs, like where I specifically thought that the flow is most disrupted. Some of these aren't really due to the experimental nature of some songs. Some of them are just like kind of the placement of how songs were. But I'm just going to read that word for word because it'll be easier. Okay, so word for word, what I wrote down is, I respect her taking these risks, although it comes with the downside of the album as a whole not being very cohesive. There are chunks on the album that really work well with each other that are broken up by tracks that are completely different and disrupt the good flow. So I think from Echo of My Shadow to Some Type of Skin, there's definitely cohesion. Those are probably actually the most cohesive songs on this album, but this is soon ruined by The Essence, which brings the album to almost a complete halt in both energy and sound. It's so different, and that's one that's not necessarily experimental. You're just throwing an acoustic song in the middle of an album like this. It just feels strange to me. And then we go from The Essence and Earthly Delights. Those two kind of fit in with each other well enough, but then once again, I think The Dark Dresses Lightly doesn't fit in as well with those two. And keep in mind, that was one of my favorite songs, but it did suck that there was a little bit of a disruptive sound from that song sounding so different from the previous two. And then The Dark Dresses Lightly through Dreams, I think those songs fit pretty well together. This grouping is split with the song My Name. I think My Name really cut that off quick. It was another drastically different sound. And then My Name through Starvation, I think fit all right, but the ending of Starvation was so drastically different from the rest of the album. It kind of makes it so there's like literally no other song on this album that I think could have gone behind Starvation and it would have fit in perfectly. That ending is just, it's so drastically different from every sound that's in this album. It really does it does take you out of it a bit. And then I think after that, the rest of the album fits in fairly well. And just for funsies, I actually reordered the album songs like the best way I could possibly fit them in a way that I think would be a bit more cohesive. Check it out if you want, my order of it, because I'm curious to see if anybody else really, if they could really see where I'm going for with this. Yeah, so overall, I'd say I did enjoy this album quite a bit. I think there's some things that I wish she would have done a little bit differently. A lot of this comes down to preference. And before you come after me, it's all respect on my end here. And I did really enjoy this album. I don't want to make it seem like I super hated this album or anything. There's some things that I really wish she just did a little bit differently, and I think I would have enjoyed the album a lot more. And even like when I reorder the songs, I find that I like the album more just based on the order, because I think even the songs that I didn't like as much, I end up liking a little bit more. It's kind of interesting to see just how much the order of songs on an album can make the songs individually sound. I'm not like a huge artist or anything, so take my critiques as you will. Good album. Good album. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate it. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure to leave a like down below and subscribe. That would mean a lot to me. It really helps out. And let me know how you feel about this album. Let me know your thoughts versus mine on the album. Basically, just tell me whatever down in the comments below, and I appreciate it. Yeah, thank you guys so much. And anyways, I will see you later. Bye-bye.